Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm Lynn Gutas, and as the Director of the European Institute for Asian Studies, I am delighted to welcome you all today for this EIAS webinar on the EU Green Deal and prospects for EU-Taiwan circular economy cooperation. The complementarity of policy initiatives in both the EU and Taiwan in reaching a green and circular economy, as well as carbon neutrality by 2050, are creating the potential for stronger cooperation in these particular fields. With the establishment of the EU Green Deal, the EU is set to secure its competitive economic position while leading global efforts on the circular economy, in particular through its circular economy action plan and making sustainable products the norm. At the same time, by developing a circular production system, Taiwan seeks to fully recycle materials and a zero-waste society and economy. Taiwan's introduced also its Circular Economy Promotion Plan in December 2018, merging the ideal of a circular economy and the visions of sustainability and innovation into various economic activities. Deepening bilateral exchanges on advancing the circular economy, opportunities for collaboration and innovation could be further explored. Therefore, today's discussion will assess the potential for EU and Taiwanese businesses and policymakers on shaping mutually beneficial green cooperation in the circular economy and to promote investment, trade, and technology exchanges between the respective industries. It is a great honor to present you our panel of distinguished speakers today. First, I would like to give the floor to Minister Zhang Ziqian, who is the Minister of Environmental Protection Administration in Taiwan. Mr. Chang, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Kodos, 欧盟环境总署副总署长 Mr. Drake， 还有欧洲议会议员 Mr. Bondra， 我们蔡大使，我们学员基金会的王董事长，以及各位线上研讨会的与谈贵宾跟所有线上参与的女士先生，大家好。
Director Lynn Gothos of EIAS, Deputy Director General Joanna Drake of DG Environment, Mr. Alexandra Bondra, Member of the European Parliament, Ambassador Tsai of Taipei Representative Office in the EU and Belgium, Chairman Charles Huang of Circular Taiwan Network, distinguished guests and online participants, greetings.
首先非常感谢欧盟亚洲研究所就 EIAS 跟我们台湾驻欧盟代表处共同协力来举办这个欧盟绿色新政台欧盟循环经济合作前景的线上研讨会。
First, I would like to thank EIAS and the representative office in the EU and Belgium for arranging this webinar titled The EU Green Deal Prospects for Taiwan-EU Circular Economy Cooperation.
欧盟绿色新政是欧盟执委会很重要的一个政策，而我们也正在致力发展循环经济。那么台湾跟欧盟长期针对循环经济都有很好的合作。那么在2017年的6月，那么欧盟在比利时的布鲁塞尔举办了2017年台欧盟循环经济研讨会，那么分享政府跟民间循环经济推动的做法跟成功的经验。
The EU Green Deal is an important policy of the European Commission, where Taiwan is dedicated to the development of circular economy too. Both Taiwan and the EU enjoy long-standing cooperation in circular economy. In June 2017, the EU-Taiwan Circular Economy Seminar was organized in Brussels, Belgium. Both sides shared practices and experience in circular economy from the public and private sectors.
在2018年的6月，适逢台欧盟合作30周年，那么欧盟的成长总署也组团来台湾参加第4届台欧盟产业对话会议及欧盟创新周系列活动。那么也在我们台北市跟台南市分别举办了2018年台欧盟循环经济研讨会及媒合会。
In June 2018, it marked the 30th anniversary of Taiwan-EU cooperation. DG Growth led the delegation to Taiwan participating in a series of events, including the 4th Taiwan-EU Industrial Dialogue and the EU Innovation Week. Taiwan also worked with the EU in organizing 2018 Taiwan-EU Circular Economy International Conferences and business matchmaking forums in Taipei and Tainan.
那么2019年的12月，本人也亲自率团赴布鲁塞尔，跟欧盟共同办理了2019年台欧盟循环经济研讨会。那么也跟我们欧盟的环境总署以及成长总署的官员跟专家一起来探讨关于塑胶、营建废弃物跟太阳能板废弃资源等处理的问题。那么这个机会我也特别有去拜访我们 Miss Drake， 那在政策上也做了一些意见的交换。
In December 2019, I led a delegation myself to Brussels to attend the 2019 EU-Taiwan Circular Economy Seminar co-hosted by our agency and the EU. With the officials and experts from DG Environment and DG Growth, we had discussion regarding recycling issues of plastics, construction and demolition materials, and the solar panels. During my trip, I also met with the Deputy Director General of DG Environment, Ms. Joanna Drake, to exchange ideas on relevant policies.
那么为了加强我们资源循环的推动，我们现在正从这个组织架构跟法规两方面来努力。那么在法规的部分呢，我们要进行修法，那么强化再利用的管理跟有效推动资源的循环利用。那么我们会针对可再利用的资源来强化管理，推动循环利用，也会来新定有关再利用产品的品质标准、产品用途及流向管理，那么使可再利用的产品能够适才适所。
To promote resource circularity, we are working on our organizational structure and legal framework. In terms of legal framework, to strengthen recycling management and efficient resource circularity, we will enhance our management on recycled resources and promote circular use practices. We will add quality standards on recycled products, product usage, and flow management to make better use of recycled products.
另外，我们也要建立我们的财政的工具，那么要来促进资源的循环利用。所以我们在未来的立法，我们将会来征收事业废弃物的基金。那么在组织架构方面，那么为了整合资源，那么原来我们是希望在规划中的环境资源部底下来设置资源循环署。那么现在当然受到疫情，这个进度有点延后。那我们为了尽快的来推动这个台湾的资源循环，那么我们规划在近期要来设置资源循环办公室，那么专责来办理整体资源循环政策及管理，那么全面来盘点分析我们的废弃资源，发展能资源化技术跟建立媒合的管道，那么也会分别针对有机资源、无机资源及金属及化学品资源等分组来全力来推动。
In addition, we hope to promote resource circularity through financial instruments. We will make a new law to establish a business waste fund. In terms of organizational structure, we had a plan to set up the Department of Resource Circularity under the Ministry of Environmental Resources. However, it is on hold due to the pandemic. Nevertheless, to speed up Taiwan's resource circularity, we will set up the Resource Circulation Office recently in charge of resource circularity policies and management. The office will analyze waste resources, develop technology for resource circularity, and establish business matchmaking channels. And we will set up specialized task forces for organic resources, inorganic resources, and metal and chemical resources to fully promote resource circularity.
那么另外，欧盟预定在2050年要达到碳中和，那我们台湾也正朝这个方向来努力。那么由于我们不是联合国气候变化纲要公约的缔约国，所以我们在自己订定了国内法，就是温室气体减量及管理法。那么我们也把我们的减量目标，那么依照当时巴黎协定，就是控制温升在2度C 以下的目标，那么定到我们的法里面去。那也就是说，我们原来的目标是2050年要减量为2005年的1半。当然，现在我们也正在检讨，依据国际的趋势， 那么是不是把目标要调整成2050年净零排放？那目前我们正在就减碳路径进行检讨跟规划。
In addition, the EU plans to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Taiwan also works towards the same goal. Although Taiwan is not a signatory of the UNFCCC, we stipulated the Greenhouse Gas Reduction and Management Act and declare our nationally determined contribution according to the Paris Agreement to help achieve the goal of limiting global temperature increase to within 2 degrees. By 2050, we will cut our emission to half of the level of 2005. Now we are reviewing our carbon reduction pathway in accordance with the Global 2050 Net Zero Initiative.
那么在这里我也要特别谢谢 Vondra 议员长期对于我们台湾的支持跟协助。那也很期待在这个疫情趋缓之后，能有机会邀请我们 EIAS 欧盟环境总署、我们的议员等各位贵宾到台湾来访问。那我们也能够面对面来交流，进一步来促进台湾跟欧盟的实质合作。那么也希望我们台欧盟双方透过此次线上研讨会的充分交流，分享经验，那能够共同协助我们的产业做到循环经济、绿色转型。那么最后祝本次线上研讨会圆满成功，所有参与的朋友都能收获满满。谢谢。
Here, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Alexander Vondra for his long-standing support for Taiwan, and I look forward to meeting all the guests from EIAS, DG Environment, and the European Parliament in Taiwan after the COVID-19 subsides, so that we can engage in a face-to-face meeting and further enhance concrete cooperation between Taiwan and the EU. It is hoped that through this webinar, both sides can share experience and help our industries to achieve a circular and green transition. Last but not least, I wish every success of today's webinar and all the participants a fruitful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Chung, for this excellent presentation and overview. Well, we look forward to finally meet in person again as well after the pandemic and once travel is possible again. Next, I would like to give the floor to the EU side, to Mrs. Joanna Drake, Deputy Director General of DG Environment at the European Commission. Mrs. Drake, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and good morning, and thank you very much, Minister, as well, for that great introduction. It is always a pleasure to address you today in this webinar, and by the way, it's a good opportunity to touch base again on the subject after the initial contacts that we've had. EU-Taiwan Circular Economy Cooperation needs to keep going strong. This subject has, over the last years, been at the center of our dialogue, and indeed we should continue to not only exchange information and best practices, but also to intensify cooperation. The transition to a climate-neutral, clear and circular economy, where economic growth is decoupled from resource use, pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, is at the heart of the European Green Deal. The Green Deal is the EU's growth strategy. It has been designed from the start to make the EU's economy sustainable by turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities and making the transition fair and inclusive. The economic and social impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic made this strategy ever more pertinent. It was a very conscious choice of the EU leaders to put the EU recovery plan as a central tool to drive the green transition. As stated by President von der Leyen, Next Generation EU will make the EU a leader in circular economy. Funds will be directed to recover from the crisis while contributing to the green, circular and digital twin transition. This green and digital transitions, both running parallelly, of course, will play a key role in revitalizing and modernizing our economies. Investing in clean and digital technologies together with a circular economy will create jobs and growth. But I would like to now make the point about, the triple win, as we like to call it, about why it is so important for this transition to actually happen. It is a win for society, first of all, because we will create jobs through high and low skilled job creation and also promising a better quality of life with a non-toxic environment. Secondly, it is a win for the economy. Businesses will have new opportunities, will have cost savings and increased innovation, for instance, through new production processes and new business models, as well as new materials. A third win, and that's, of course, a win for the environment. We will preserve our ecosystems. We will have more efficient resource consumption. We will reduce waste, and we reduce waste generation itself and pollution, and we will lower carbon emissions. This is the promise of circular economy, and this is why the pull towards that transition needs to remain strong. It has to be first well understood, well maintained, and well implemented on the ground. And of course, we have been working very hard in the European Union on the Green Deal. We have set our climate neutrality ambition by 2050 with the climate law, which has now been adopted. It has been enhanced to 55%. Reduction of our ambition by 2030, adopted, and the new circular economy action plan, of course, has been adopted too. The biodiversity strategy 2030, the farm to fork strategy, and the zero pollution action plan, alongside a chemical strategy for sustainability. All of these are pillars on which the Green Deal is well buttressed and which will take it also into the future. My colleague Kestutis, who is the director in charge of the circular economy process within DG Environment, will share with you even more detailed information on the new circular economy action plan in the panel that will follow these opening speeches. But I would already like to emphasize that it aims at reducing our consumption footprints. Of course, we can make a lot of ambitious targets, but if we do not tackle the source of the issue, which is that at the end of the day, we need to ensure that our own consumption patterns will start changing, and our own behaviors, therefore, will need to start changing, then the targets can remain very unrealistic. We need to double Europe's circular material use rate in the coming decade. We need to therefore create and incentivize the use of circular material. First of all, the availability of it, and then incentivize the use, with, of course, the peace of mind of whoever is using it and whoever is using the products by which it is produced. But in order to achieve this, we need to be strategic in the actions we put across the entire supply chain. And the reason is that we need to change how we produce, and we need to change how we consume. We need to give priority to the upstream action. We will focus on key product value chains and on preventing waste in the first place. The action plan also identifies actions to generate safe and high-quality secondary raw materials when waste cannot be avoided. We have started to deliver on these commitments. I'm sure that you've heard about the regulatory framework for batteries. This has already been adopted in December of last year. With it, the Commission proposes a mandatory requirement for all batteries, whether they are industrial, automotive, electric, or portable, placed on the EU market. They all have to respect certain parameters. Requirements such as the use of responsibly sourced materials with restricted use of hazardous substances, minimum content of recycled materials, carbon footprint, performance and durability, and labeling, as well as meeting collection and recycling targets, are all essential for the development of more sustainable and competitive battery industry across Europe and around the world. We are also working, as we speak, on a broader sustainable product policy initiative. It's a mouthful of words, but it in fact means that we will revise the Eco-Design Directive. We will propose additional legislative measures as appropriate And the reason is, the objective behind all this is to make products placed on the EU market more sustainable. We will also shortly act upon the European Green Deal commitment to reduce exports of waste in third countries. The upcoming revision of the waste shipment regulation will play a key role on reducing waste exports that are illegal and have harmful environmental and health impacts in third countries. Innovation remains very important. Throughout the EU research programme Horizon Europe, we shall support the development of indicators and data, novel materials and products, substitution and elimination of hazardous substances based on the safe by design approach. Again, change of approach. A priori, we are designing for safety purposes, for serving the circularity objective. We need to base also our production on circular business models and new production and recycling technologies, keeping in mind the role of digital tools to achieve circular objectives. It is clear that the Commission alone cannot make the economy circular. The transition will only happen if there is a genuine joint effort from stakeholders, if there's a common understanding, including from business, including from international partners, including from the global value chain, that we need to push towards this becoming circular together. Towards this end, the EU is also actively promoting a global ambitious agenda. Together with UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, and UNIDO, we launched the Global Alliance on Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency as a new platform for global policy exchanges. It includes at the moment Canada, Chile, Colombia, Japan, Kenya, Morocco, New Zealand, Nigeria, Norway, Peru, Rwanda, and South Africa. They have all joined the alliance. The EU is also promoting the launch of negotiations for a global agreement on plastics at the UNEA 5.2. In our view, this would be the right and most effective approach to fight marine litter and make the plastics industry circular. We will ensure the free trade agreements reflect the enhanced objectives of the circular economy, and we are working with our international partners to promote circular economy models, including through our circular economy missions, which we aim at relaunching once the conditions will allow. To conclude, I wish you a very fruitful exchange today and really look forward to continue addressing circular economy in the context of our existing channels of cooperation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Joanna Drake, especially also in highlighting how the EU is achieving its triple wins, more sustainable growth, and of course, a circular economy at a global scale. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Alexander Vondra, who is a member of the parliament from the Czech Republic, and he's also the ECR coordinator for the Committee on Environment in the European Parliament. And with his long-standing career, I'm sure that he will have a lot to share with us. Mr. Vondra, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, EIAS, for organizing this important and timely done event. I'm coming from my home country is the Czech Republic, and on one hand, my countrymen are almost the world champion in selecting the waste and in the waste management collection. So here we can serve as an example. On the other hand, with the principle of the quality recycling, not speaking about the principles of adopting the circular economy, we are lagging behind. And the situation in the EU is generally very similar or the same. On one hand, millions of tons of waste is being shipped into Asia every year, and we cannot rely on this good go forever. At the same time, you have the growing dangerous waste, and in particular the plastic into the world oceans, and we need to stop this kind of practices. And also, the resources are scarce, and with the global development of many non-European countries, we have to expect even more fight for the resources. So not just the quality of the environment, but the proper global management, all those are the reasons why we are now focused on the circular economy, and why the Commission has adopted its circular economy action plan last year as one of the main pillars of the European Green Deal. We are in particular focused on sectors that use most resources and where the potential for circularity is high, such as electronics and ICT, batteries and vehicles, packaging, plastics, textile, constructions, and building, food, water, and the nutrition. So also the European Parliament has adopted its position early this year, making over 130 political recommendations for achieving even more circularity. So you can see how important this agenda is to average member of the European Parliament. Today, in June 2021, something else needs to be stressed, that the Commission 2020 non-legislative communication and the EP's reports has just been a light preparatory phase, which is now to be followed by heavy legislative proposals. For example, and let me enumerate some of them: review of the EU rules on the waste shipment, proposal empowering consumers in the green transition, revision of the eco-design directive, review of the EU rules on concentration limits of persistent organic pollutant in waste, reviewing of the requirement on packaging and packaging waste in the EU, and finally also the update on of the EU rules on industrial emissions. So the first legislative proposal under the action plan on battery regulation has already been tabled in December last year, and just yesterday we have discussed this in our committee. And unfortunately, I have to express some of my disappointment here. The text is, on one hand, very prescriptive, but unfinished on the other. It asks producers, for example, to use recycled content as soon as possible, while there is no market with the second-hand raw materials in place. The other issue is the fact that the proposal counts on many delegated and implementing acts, which effectively lowers the level of law certainty for all future market operators. At the end of the day, we can end up with an ideal legislation which will be totally unworkable and will pose hurdles to our competitiveness. And that's exactly what has to be avoided. So what I expect from this seminar is a debate on how to match more circularity with the global competitiveness, and how to share the best practices in the field of circular economy. Taiwan, for a long time, has shown us how to cope with the COVID last year, and I am convinced it has much to say on the challenges we faced with the green transition too. Taiwan is a key supplier for many ICT products to the European market, and at the same time is a very highly developed countries which is trying to promote the modern ways of economy. So from my perspective, it's an ideal partner for the EU to work out the plan how to promote the circular economy, not just in the bilateral level, but also in the global arena. And thus, once again, let me thank for organizing this webinar as a kind of a kick-off or of the future very fruitful cooperation. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vondra. And well, indeed, we are organizing this event today to see how we can actually exchange best practices and to match more circularity globally, especially now between the EU and Taiwan, and to achieve a proper green transition. So my part is almost done at this point. So I would like to thank all of our three speakers so far. And I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Charles Wang, who is the founder and the chairman of Taiwan Circular Economy Network, and who is very well placed to take over as the moderator and as the chair for the rest of the session today. So thank you all very much. And Charles, the floor is entirely yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. A very, very good day to all our audience and to all participants of this event. I would like to first thank both EIAS and Taipei Representative Office for organizing today's event. In the broad context of the EU Green Deal, today's event demonstrates Taiwan and EU's commitment to promoting the circular economy and strengthening cooperation in this area. I'm personally most honored and privileged to be the moderator for this session. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate the entire EU community on the community's relentless and dedicated effort in crafting and implementing EU's signature initiative, the Green Deal. It is your global outreach and global leadership which has turned the two tiny words, Green Deal, into a giant vision for all countries near and far, and across all societal communities. In short, when all said and done, years from now, launching and proliferating the Green Deal will be viewed upon as one of the pivotal historical global undertaking of our times. Again, we thank and congratulate EU for your courage and boldness. Now, for the benefits of this very diverse audience group from different parts of the world, different professional background, let me take a few minutes to quickly introduce what circular economy is, by way of addressing three most frequently asked questions about circular economy. Let me work on the slide here. First and foremost question is, what is the causal relationship between the existing linear economy with our livelihood, with our well-being, as manifested in our society, environment, economy, and even politics? Or what exactly is the apparent problem with linear economy that we so urgently need to create a new economic model called circular economy to replace it? On this question, in the first glance, the answer would seem simple and obvious. The take, make, use, dispose linear model is clearly the root cause to all the externalities we are experiencing. Externalities including the health of our children, our citizens, pollution and degradation to the vast acreage of our land and rivers, income gap between the haves and have-nots, and of course, greenhouse gas emission and the climate crisis. However, if we were to dig deeper, we will realize that our society at large, since Industrial Revolution, has come to accept, tolerate, and in fact, more frequent than not, and knowingly or unknowingly, encourage and reward the practices of privatizing profits and benefits while publicizing costs and risks, which we have broadly referred to as externalities. Externalities has long been deemed a norm in the context of linear economy. Another way of putting it is this: if we have an economic model that inflicts no harm to our environment or our planet in the first place, we wouldn't have to allocate huge sum of resources for cleaning up and mitigating it. Therefore, circular economy encourages public institutions and private industries alike to regard protecting our planet as a form of long-term investments instead of one-off short-term expense. Let's move on to the second and the next question: what we are doing and what we have done in addressing the so-called problems resulted from linear economy. For the most part of the last 10 to 20 years, as we deal with or attempting to mitigate the increasing severities of externalities, we encourage all enterprises, large and small, public, private, and otherwise, to engage in CSR activities, and more recently, to stipulate ESG compliance. While these actions are indeed most needed and ought to be encouraged, however, they represent only part of the much broader mitigating solutions to climate crisis. It is fair to say that the results from CSR actions or even ESG compliance alone will do to reverse the trend toward net zero, and therefore severity of climate crisis will remain unabated. A case in point, no amount, regardless of how significant of our collective so-called corporate-sponsored beach cleaning initiatives are, can eliminate vast amounts of ocean debris. Hence, we must, in tandem, develop and instigate structural changes to put a stop to daily dumping of ocean debris at the source and in the first place. In other words, if we were to accelerate transition from linear to circular economy, we must place greater emphasis on redesigning our economy to become more circular. An architect named Buckminster Fuller from the US put it best when he said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing models obsolete." And this is the spirit behind the circular economy, creating the circular economy to replace the old, outdated linear economy. This leads us to the last question that is frequently asked. What is circular economy? And what would be the path forward or a roadmap leading to circular economy? Transitioning to a more resilient circular economy requires all of us to rethink and redefine what our future needs and collective well-beings are. In Taiwan, we have developed a circular economy roadmap consisting of 3 major developmental paradigms. Each paradigm aims to first promote a new consumerism, second, a resource-efficient production network, and third, a win-win collaborative culture. First, on the demand side, a new consumerism to decouple from product ownership should be encouraged in circular economy, to encourage evolvement of product sales business model to product as a service business model for both B2B as well as B2C users alike. This new consumerism is already evidenced through a very robust development in the last few years in the subscription economy or the share economy. On the supply side, a new production supply network will emerge and should emerge, focusing on improving resource efficiency by decoupling from natural resources, especially when it comes to non-renewable resources. This involves achieving zero waste and zero emission goals by deploying alternative raw materials or improved production and process technologies, and to separate, collect, and turn waste into high-value resources, etc. On the system side, we need to decouple from win-lose culture to break away from territorial and parochial thinking. We live in a zero-sum world with finite resources. We need to think systematically and holistically. We need to build alliances which is enriched by a more sustainable and more inclusive win-win dialogues. And this concludes my brief introduction to circular economy. I'd like now to invite each of our panelists to speak to our audience. We are now most honored to have 3 distinguished panelists today. And each of you will have 8 minutes to share your thoughts and insights. Let me begin by introducing our first panelist, Mr. Sadowska. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name again. Mr. Sadowska is the Director of Circular Economy and Green Growth at the DG Environment of the European Commission. He has been working on the EU's circular economy plans for the past 7 years. And he is a key decision maker in the development of the EU's circular economy. Director Sadauskas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, and close to good evening, probably for colleagues in Taiwan. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's great to speak to a very distinguished audience on the topic that is coming to a center stage, also globally, as we can see from many multilateral and bilateral statements. If only, for instance, yesterday's declarations, joint declarations by European Union and United States, or European Union and Canada, where circular economy for the first time finds its way into the top level declarations, which means that the concept itself is really also being recognized in international relations. The European Union adopted its second circular economy action plan in March last year, and it set out the roadmap for the next 5 years. It announced initiatives for the entire life cycle of products, from design, manufacturing to consumption, repair, reuse, recycling, and then bringing back the resources back into the economy. The aim of the action plan is to reduce Europe's consumption footprint and double Europe's circular material use rate in the coming decade, while at the same time boosting economic growth. We know already that applying ambitious circular measures in Europe can increase Europe's GDP and can also create many jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs. The flagship of the action plan is the Sustainable Products Initiative. There are many initiatives there, but this one is a special one. Why is that so? It is really at the core of the Sustainable Product Policy Framework. This framework will set the measures aiming at changing the way we produce and consume by setting incentives to make products fit for climate neutral circular economy, reduce waste, and ensure that the performance of front runners in sustainability progressively becomes the norm. This Sustainable Products Initiative will have at its core a broadening of the scope of the current existing legislation, which is the Eco-Design Directive, mainly addressed to energy efficiency, but now looking into other aspects and allowing, among other measures, to ensure high sustainability of products beyond energy. Such measures will aim to improve product durability, reusability, upgradability, repair, reduce carbon and environmental footprints, address presence of hazardous chemicals in products, and increase their recycled content. It will apply to raw materials, to intermediate, and to consumer products. A major measure under sustainable major part under the Sustainable Product Initiative is Digital Product Passport, which is also a novelty. And it would improve business and consumer access to information on product characteristics and enable economic actors to make informed decisions along its lifetime. The other measures that are being explored as part of this initiative are ban of destruction of unsold durable goods, incentivizing product as a service, or other business models where producers keep ownership of the product or the responsibility for its performance throughout the life cycle. Why is that so? Because we believe that if we shift the incentives back to the owner would be interested in longevity and durability and the quality of the products. We intend to deliver this initiative still this year. We're working on a very comprehensive impact assessment. The open public consultation has been closed. It was open to all the world, and we're assessing the results. In parallel to this product initiative, we're also thinking about consumers. It's very important, because if you don't get the consumers right, incentives right, you will not succeed with the product parts. So we are preparing initiatives to empower the consumers, and especially to tackle false green claims. The objective is for the citizens to contribute better to a circular economy. Consumers will be able to choose more easily green products and avoid the proliferation of mostly confusing and misleading voluntary sustainability claims and various labels. An action also on key value chains is also being developed. The Circular Economy Action Plan identified 7 key product value chains with a high potential for circularity, and the goal is to translate the principles of more sustainable product policy framework so that we can change the way we produce, use, and recycle, for instance, textiles, buildings, batteries, electronics, plastics, packaging, cars. The Commission will also take action in the next years to facilitate the shift of these sectors into increased circularity, offering business effective strategies to recover from stronger from the crisis. Also this year, the Commission will present the proposal for the Circular Electronics Initiative, as well as an initiative on textiles. And the open public consultation on textiles initiative was recently launched and will remain open until the beginning of August. So by all means, please participate in it. Now, transforming waste into resources is also high on the agenda. We have to reduce waste in the first place. We often talk about recycling, but the main thing is really to reduce. Otherwise, we'll keep growing with waste production. The Commission will explore the feasibility of setting up waste reduction targets for the most impactful waste streams, for example, packaging. And that's why we are working on the revision of important pieces of legislation, such as Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive of European Union. We will act, of course, upon the European Green Deal commitment to reduce exports of waste in third countries. The revision of the waste shipment regulation that Alexander Vondra referred to will play a key role on reducing waste exports that have a harmful environmental and health impacts in third countries and can be treated domestically within European Union. We have also decided to look into other products and the laws that underpin it. I mentioned packaging, but we will also be looking at our legislation regulating automotive products, vehicles, basically, and trying to make sure that they also apply circular approaches. And there will be other initiatives as well. The batteries is already out there as an initiative, and it is a blueprint of how we would like to see the future product policies to develop. So the batteries regulation is really a good example for you to look into what we have in mind when we talk about all other products here. A key concern of the Circular Economy Action Plan is to reap the benefits of digital transition and to reduce the demand for natural resources, the information and transaction costs, and encourage innovative business models. So we'd like to incentivize business innovation as much as possible here. We will also look into the revision of the current monitoring framework with indicators which reflect the interlinkages between circularity, climate, neutrality, as well as the ambition to cut down the pollution to zero. Finally, we continue to working in the mainstream of circular economy into various policies. Most important, of course, the climate policies, because we know that we will not be able to achieve the climate neutrality without circular approaches. And also to support companies to shift towards more resource-efficient business model. And that's why the recovery plan that Deputy Director General Joanna Drake was referring to will play a key role in supporting these transformations. There will be a lot of public funding that will be channeled to circular solutions, be it research, the cohesion funds, or many others that will be available for authorities, regional and national, for municipal, as well as for economic operators and civil society. Of course, public funding will not be able to do it all alone. It will be meant to trigger investments, especially from the private businesses, into these models. But we have to make sure that the public authorities do trigger this transition. And this is going to be a long journey, therefore it needs to be accompanied by consensus among the stakeholders. And that's precisely what the Circular Economy Action Plan is aiming to do. So with this, I hand over to you and ready to take part in the exchange.
Thank you, Director Sadauskas. I listened very carefully to every word you spoke, and I tried to summarize it, but you have done it so well, I don't really even know how to summarize it. Very succinctly, thank you very much. But I do like to comment to our audience or invite our audience. I think what Sadowska has mentioned just in the last 10 minutes speech is a very good summary of what's on the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan. So I would recommend our audience to download that copy, to study that, and use it as a reference as we move forward to embrace circular economy. Secondly, in his speech, he talked about quite a bit of actions, legislatives and regulation policies that actually are in practice and also being studied in Taiwan's EPA. So our next speaker, Ms. Lai, will talk about that and share our experience in Taiwan regarding improving efficiencies or resource efficiencies via legislative regulations and whatnot. And also, Mr. Sadowska mentioned about the batteries. And we have an expert here today also as a speaker, ZC Chen, who would also speak later. Perhaps I'd like to invite him to briefly comment on the batteries his company is being engaged in way of research and development, and also in relation to commercializing the more environmental friendly batteries. So anyway, with our second speaker, which is Director General Lai, and I'd like to introduce her as she is the Director General of Waste Management Department of Taiwan's EPA. She specializes in environmental policies and environmental economics and has been active in the waste management sector for over 20 years, although she looks younger than what you might come to expect. She's also actively involved in the promotion and formulation of policies for circular economy. Let me now turn the floor to Director General Lai. Thank you, Director Lai.
I'm glad to have the opportunity to introduce the status of policy of CE in Taiwan briefly. And next, I will talk about the practice of circulation of plastics. First, why we implement the CE in Taiwan? Because of the international trends, the carbon emission reduction and resource recycling trends. Next, the high population density of Taiwan causes the high environmental pressure of the country. The last is a new business model has gradually formed and thanks to the collaboration of industry and government agencies. And in Taiwan, 76% of materials are imported. In 2019, approximately 325 million tons of materials were used. And the recycling rate is 58% in 2020. The key point is we have initiated the 4-in-1 resource recycling program since 1997. And we have established a coordinated mechanism between government departments because we have the Resource Recycling Act and establish the action plan. The action plan including the 4 aspects, strategies, including the production, consumption, waste management, and market for secondary materials, and 4 key performance indicators. And since 2013, we begin to do the statistics for material usage and build the online system. By analysis the data, we can have a brief understanding for material flow and also calculate several indicators to evaluate our policy. And that is a key performance index in Taiwan. The resource productivity is 76 in 2019. And we have formed the framework to promote resource recycling. The organic biological resources, organic chemical resources, metal resources, and non-metal residual resources. Next, the circulation of plastics. This page shows the flow chart of plastics in Taiwan. The main flow of plastic after manufacture is export. After domestic use, mostly goes to energy recovery and recycled. So you can see that this is estimate that about 499,000 tons of materials will be recycled. And remaining waste plastic are about 92,000 tons and about 860,000 tons goes to energy recovery. The recycling rate of domestic plastics waste is about 35%, and it reached 95% with the additional of energy recovery. So we need to promote and to increase recycling rate. The strategy for us to do that is increase the amount of recycling and increase the added value of recycling and establish verification mechanism for recycled plastics. And we have 6 actions. Require all plastic packaging to be recycled and set the goal and establish allowance and develop a new market and develop the innovation technology and establish verification mechanism for recycled plastics and reduce the use of plastic packaging. The action 1, require all plastic packaging to be recycled. We divided recyclable plastic packaging into 3 major categories: the containers and others, and not available for recycling. And action 2 is short-term and long-term goals. And action 3, we establish alliance, including divided the alliance between user, planning organisms, and recycling industry, and to create a self-recurring rules of packaging free. And now we are going to establish a consulting group to assist wholesaling industry in promoting projects of packaging reduction and recycling. And action 4, the green design and production practice to to develop alternative materials use biodegradable film for agricultural film. And action 5, I think it's very important for us to improve the circulation of plastics. We set a goal and to ask the industry to use recycled plastics and use a voluntary method and laws to achieve the goal. The practice including the set goal of recycled content and to set the segregation waste and information disclosure, and the last is the verification. And action 6, how we reduce the use of plastic packaging. So we have the plan, now is ongoing, including the circulation box for online shopping and the rental reusable tableware for food delivery. And thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Lai. Thank you for taking us through what Taiwan's EPA has been focusing over the last few years. And you have spoken about a pretty wide range of initiatives and accomplishments over the last few years. And your presentation is very, very concise. And I wonder if it's possible that presentation could be made available to our audience if they wish to know more about what the great things that EPA has been doing here in Taiwan, and perhaps for future collaborations too. And obviously in your talk, about 6 points, you mentioned a great deal of plastics and how using plastic as an example of how to improve raw material efficiencies. And you spoke about the need for alliances, the need for green design, and the need for finding the replacing alternative raw materials, and then the verification mechanisms involved. It's all very, very complete. And so I think what you have described and what you have articulated is particularly worthy for countries where resources are limited, similar to Taiwan, and then it's a society or the country's focus should be on how to maximize the resources that is imported to a country, and plastic is one of the good examples. Anyway, thank you again for your introduction to Taiwan's initiatives in way of circular economy. Now, our next speaker, Dr. Chen, ZC Chen, he's the chairman and CEO of BenQ Material Corp. And BenQ is a large conglomerate in Taiwan. Dr. Chen has spearheaded the company's transformation from a polarizer supplier into a provider of diversified materials for LCDs, medical solutions, lithium batteries, and performance textiles. Under his leadership, the company has elevated its ESG initiatives and is advancing a zero carbon program to drive growth and performance. And he also serves on the board of Circular Taiwan Foundation. Dr. Chen, I'd like to remind you, don't forget to touch on the topic of battery. The audience is yours. Thank you.
I think that I can find a lot of echo from the voice of our European friends. I think I want to share industrial view of what we can do in the circular economy. Taiwan is a powerhouse of the global manufacturing, such as electronics, high-end and bicycle, medical equipment, and performance textile, and so on. Among others, I think just like Mr. Wang was talking, we are especially strong in the information technology, ICT, where Taiwan dominates the entire ecosystem, from basic material key components such as semiconductor, and also the circular design and final products. The entire process are very sophisticated, and of course, it's full of carbon emission. This is quite an example of the importance of the cross-border carbon emission control. On one hand, we are at the center of the excellence for ICT, for the information technology. We design and perfect the electronics for the global market. But on the other hand, we export our huge carbon emission to the rest of the world, to Europe, to US, and to the Africa, and so on. Also, as the linear economy still dominate, we also export the parts, the products, shipped out and end up landfill or burned in other countries. Recently, we have seen dire picture of the electronic waste and the recycling in India and in Africa. In fact, these things also happened in Taiwan long time ago. So, make the world shorter. Current model of the linear economy should not be continued. So, as the information technology has been developed for almost 30 years, the power of innovation has created a drastic change to the human life. It brings a lot of convenience in large people's reach beyond the imagination. On the other hand, the computing power has become so powerful that has exceeded ordinary people's needs. Even recently, we have seen the development plateau for the new innovation. So it's also the time we need to rethink the direction of the innovation before depletion of the natural resource. So what we think, people should renovate the mindset and the business model. The robust design aiming for reliability and durability should be considered as a priority. We might need only 10% or 20% extra effort to make the product life much longer, beyond 10 years or even longer. But also from the consumer side, we also need to change the business model. I mean, it has to change from current short business cycle to longer business cycle. So another model, just as Charles says, we have to change the model from current buy and sell to a subscription or the share economy. To make the word short, to conclude, this is a very technology-driven business. We have to solve the cross-border issue, and the Taiwan industry can lead the world to reduce the carbon emission, and the sustainability technology and the material can play a key role toward the zero emission. Just to answer Mr. Sadowska's question about the battery, it's similar to most of the ICT product. We have to change from the design cycle, so that's we call it the redesign. Battery, as I see, I mean, most of the country in Europe, people are talking about approaching the zero emission very soon. But that's based on the assumption that the carbon emission happened in other parts of the world. We can see now the EV is becoming more and more popular in Europe especially, but to make the supply security, people start to build battery factory in Europe, in a couple of countries. We are the battery supplier, so we know the situation. When you start to build a battery, you will see the carbon emission increase. So I think the entire industry, the entire EV needs further innovation before it really go into practice. That's what I think. So basically, I think that's what I say. So I would open to more technical or more industrial question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for your succinct summary of activities within your corporation. Dr. Chen talked about, in the main, at the end, the importance of, if I were to summarize it correctly, the importance of moving toward circular economy by embracing a strategy in two ways. One is to redesign the products for longer lifetimes. And it is especially relevant for countries with limited resources. And the second recommendation by Dr. Chen is, again, about redesigning. In addition to redesigning the product itself, perhaps on the consumer side, we need to redesign our business model from what I call a product sales-driven economy or model to a product as a service model. And for the audience, this is one of the area where many of the companies in Taiwan hope to collaborate with the EU in exploring new business models like that. In other words, if we were to move away or from the traditional linear economy, and the more fundamental solution to it would involve business model redesign, in addition to turning waste into resources, improving resource efficiency through better productions and whatnot. Anyway, again, thank you, Dr. Chen, for your introduction. Before we move to entertain the questions from the audience, I do like to ask a question to our three participants, a fairly simple and specific questions. And I'd like to ask you to take 1 to 2 minutes, perhaps to share with us. In 1 or 2 minutes, can you share with us your thoughts on how Taiwan and EU, as we move forward in way of collaboration, what could we do together? And any one of you can start. Or why don't we do this? We'll start with, you've been resting too long, Mr. Sadauskas. It's your turn now, first.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. What we can do is really share ideas and experiences, because what circular economy requires is also some experimentation and testing. Not everything will work. We know that there is never a perfect solution from the first go. So what would be very interesting is to share the approaches and technologies that do seem to work, and they have a durable and lasting effect, no regret solutions. So that's I think what we can do. We have established a circular economy stakeholder platform together with our advisory body of the EU Economic and Social Committee, which comprises businesses, small, big, consumers, trade unions. And we encourage everybody to share these experiences there through that platform. It's sort of a clearinghouse, well, not a clearinghouse. It's a place to go on circular economy. So this is where people should draw some inspiration and post ideas, as well as post questions or proposals. So I would say sharing ideas is the first thing. The second one, of course, is trying to align as much as possible the purposes and the aims of the circular economy, and see some convergence in the approaches. I would like especially to call for the product policy and the waste prevention, because we talked very often indeed about recycling, recovery of the materials, and I think this is really, really good. That's precisely what needs to be part of it. Where we need to do an extra work is on the prevention part, on the waste prevention part, because we think we might invest into all the recycling capacities, but we will not recycle our way out of the trouble and out of the problem. For example, we can try to recycle as much as possible the plastic packaging, but if plastic packaging keeps on growing, we know that some of it will still lose, and it will still have a major environmental footprint. So we have to think of how to reduce. Reduce really is the key word, and for that we need to really think about both the design as well as the consumer behavior and incentives to the consumer. So again, sharing ideas and sharing also regulatory ideas. We're not fixated on regulation as such because there is so much that can be done without it. But if we can fix the rules, commonly accepted rules of the behavior and of the conduct, so that they are as harmonized as possible, so that they go in the same direction and we avoid some divergence, I think that would be quite a major achievement and an opportunity for us to cooperate.
Thank you, Mr. Sadauskas. Let me follow up with that. Since circular economy now, not only is, in my view, it's not only an important initiative we are embracing, and like all the speakers were talking about, it's actually in light of the need to ascertain net zero, it's really a topic of urgency beyond importance. So my follow-up question to you is that sharing ideas and including regulatory ideas and whatnot, would you recommend or would you support some sort of more permanent working team type of things between EU and Taiwan on this particular topic, and gradually expand it to include other perhaps interested parties or nations?
Mm-hmm. I would not go into the direction of establishing something structural and permanent yet. The main reason for us is that would you believe or not, but we are rather short of resources in trying to establish too many international channels for ourselves. So we'd rather go multilateral, rather than bilateral. That's why I was referring to many of the recent declarations here, so that we align everybody there. We simply cannot cope with too many things, and so we have to do so many things in order to implement the circular economy action plan that we simply cannot afford. That's unfortunately the reality. But nothing prevents us from sharing those ideas. So, for example, anything that we do is really transparent and public. Lots of public, consultations are ongoing and will be still announced. I would encourage the Taiwanese participants or anybody else in the world to take part in all these consultations and offer ideas, because like this, that would inspire us. And through that, I think we can inspire the rest of the world. So rather than think about the structures, I'm thinking about the contents.
So I consider that your open invitation to all who is involved in today's participation to work with and to learn from EU.
Absolutely,
Great.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we should continue that dialogue. Now let's move to our second speaker. The same question I posed earlier to EPA Director Lai. That is, are there any specific actions that you would put forth or you would recommend between Taiwan and EU to pursue?
因为过去我有去欧盟拜访过，我也了解到说我们台湾要更多跟欧盟学习的地方。那现在就是可以看到我刚刚的报告，就是我是分4大物料。
And like I said, I had personally visited the European Union and learned from our counterparts in the European Union. And like in my briefing, I have provided some information regarding the 4 major materials that we are focusing on in our circular economy initiative.
在这4大物料中，我们会选择就是用一个示范计划的方式来推动。那我这里面我比较想要跟这个欧盟来合作的项目就是塑胶，以及我们生物质如何能够转换为能源的推动方式。
And among the 4 major materials that we are now promoting, we will pick up some materials for demonstration purposes. And so far, our idea of working with the European Union are focusing on the plastics and biomass materials.
那也就是说，我们因为过去是以回收的方式为主，那要转成循环的计划。那我们是以这个示范计划，然后拿一个个案在产业发展的计划，去能够去用方式来去推展，那让它形成一个示范计划。
So what exactly is the demonstration project? That is to say, for example, we have we usually recycled materials, but in the next step, in a circular economy, we need to demonstrate how to ensure a certain material can be included into a circular loop. In other words, into a circular economy, and we will use these materials as an example to be applied in a real world circular economy to show it to our counterparts in the EU.
所以我乐意说，像在塑胶，我们已经有一些从这个盘点它的一个产业链，它需要能够去促进循环的方式，就从这个法规还有它需要的技术面，来去互相交流彼此的经验。
So, for example, if we want to demo our plastic circular economy, plastic-based circular economy, we will identify relevant supply chain in the plastic industry and to demonstrate what are the relevant regulatory framework that we want to share with our counterparts in the EU, as well as the technological parts perspectives that we would like to share with our counterparts in the EU.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Director General Lai. Thank you for your response. I believe projects like this, where you piloting something, and then using that pilot to showcase all the related issues, policies and otherwise, regulatories and technologies and whatnot, is a practical and pragmatic development for implementing or transitioning circular economy. So can I consider, in the case you just described, the plastic one, on plastic, it's also an invitation from Taiwan's EPA to an open invitation to invite people to get involved and with this particular project, whereby EPA will be willing to share with the countries or individuals who are interested in the outcomes and the benefits of these type of pilots.
Yes, indeed, we would like to share our relevant demonstration project with the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our third speaker's response. Dr. Chen, you are from the commercial enterprises. So I'm not so sure you want to for intelligence purposes, proprietary purposes. I'm not so sure you want to share with everything, but I'm sure you have something to share with us in terms of what you would recommend between Taiwan and EU to move forward.
On one hand, it's toxic and dangerous to the people. And also from the carbon emission point of view, I think it's one of the priority we need to solve the electronic waste issue. So I still want to see if there's opportunity we can set up a kind of working group to put together all the stakeholders, like the supplier, component supplier, OEM manufacturer from Taiwan, and a big brand like Dell, HP, or those electronic giant, and also the consumer or distribution in Europe to work together. I think that's can be. I think may not be consume too much resource from the EU point of view, but from the commercial or from business point of view, that's quite feasible. Okay.
Okay, I think this is a very interesting topic. Example, electronic waste is a major waste, and actually increasingly even more severe than most other product category other than plastics. the way I look at it is this, and again, it's a follow-up question. Electronic waste or electronics, when they are produced in countries like Taiwan, Vietnam, and whatnot, it actually incurred a great deal of emissions, both in carbon and as well as in pollutants. So the production countries suffer from the externalities. But when the product, once it's sold, let's say to EU, and it becomes a product, and when it's completed, it becomes another form of pollutant in the consuming nations. So you have products that incur emission on the production countries, and it becomes a waste, becomes a pollutant in an EU country or consuming nations in this case. Now, in order to mitigate, to address that problem, collaboration or systematic approach or holistic views in bringing the producers and the users together to redesign the product in such a way it could both reduce the production emissions as well as waste treatment will be a very, very important topic. Now, so my follow-up question is that on a topic like this, in the case of electronics, or broadly speaking, the ICT industry, would EU be amenable, or not necessarily EU or EU nations, which is consuming countries of electronic products in the main, collaborate with the producing countries in redesigning the products, reformulating a more congruent regulatory policies. So my follow-up question, just as I just mentioned now, is to all three of you, if you can do a quick response to that. Is it possible that we bring the producers and the user together to redesign the product, reformulate the policies in such a way it would benefit both? On one hand, reducing the externality suffered in the form of emissions in the producing countries or producers, and also in the form of waste handling in the consuming nations. So, Mr. Sadauskas, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, very good point. Thank you for raising it. Indeed, the electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream from all the waste streams. And that's the one that gives also all these gruesome pictures, especially of the waste going into the places mostly in Africa, but not only, where they don't have the capacities to handle it well. So indeed, it pollutes the environment, it pollutes the people. It's really horrible pictures of children just walking through all these huge landfills, and that's a liability that we also share. And that's precisely why, as I've mentioned, one of the big initiatives that is due to come out, in the coming months, is the Circular Electronics Initiative. It's precisely to look into these aspects. How can we make sure that we address the life cycle of the electronics? And by the way, again, I stress not only waste part, because waste part is, very often rather well regulated, or let's say is regulated rather well compared to what we have for the design phase. Not to say that it's perfect. There's still a lot to be done, but still there is quite a progress there. But we have to indeed look into the design, and design has to be solved not only by the public authorities, but indeed it has to be done by the producers themselves, by the designers, and I fully agree with the consumers. And that's why also the other initiative that we are contemplating in the next couple of years is so-called the take-back scheme. Because what happens with electronics, especially with the fast turnover of the electronics, and it's increasing, it's accelerating, is that we just keep in our houses and our drawers all the tablets, phones, something that has become obsolete, that cannot be upgraded, and then we don't return it back, whereas they contain a lot of valuable materials that need to be recovered and put back into the production, rather than mined, from virgin sources. So we have to think also how to incentivize the consumers to bring back their stuff electronics, I think, is the best example. But by the way, not only electronics, I think the same applies for textiles, for cars, for you name it, for just about anything. But electronics, I think, would be a very, very good case. So I agree with you that we have to bring together the producers, the consumers. It's the entire value chain. I mean, the concept here, again, is that circular economy works only if the entire value chain cooperates. If one of the part of the chain does not cooperate, then the chain simply doesn't function. So everybody's got to come together. And again, it's not only bilateral, trilateral, it's really multilateral. It's the global initiative here. Well, we have a pretty well established cooperation with, of the electronic producers in Europe. And we do try to optimize the concept what we call the extended producer responsibility, which is very at the core, at the heart of the sustainability and circular economy, is to make sure that the producers do have the incentive of producing something better that lasts longer, than can be recovered, and they themselves should be interested in recovering and getting back all these products. So indeed, there is a lot that can be done. And let me maybe say one last thing. You mentioned indeed the production emissions or footprint in the production and footprint in the waste management. But there is also a part in between. That's where I'm talking about the value chain. The consumers themselves. I mean, the emissions are also being produced during the consumption. Okay, so we have to think about the consumption part as well. Again, mostly it's about carbon and energy, but not only that. There are some products who are not necessarily safe for the health, even during consumption part. So the entire life cycle has to be taken care of, and LCA, the life cycle approach in the value chain, that's the only solution how we can fix the issue. So I fully share with you this idea of everybody cooperating on this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sadauskas. Thank you for actually sharing with us your very systematic, holistic view of the problems and opportunities involved in electronics and other relevant products. Because of the time, I need to cut off here. However, this is a very interesting topic. I think we need to, I hope, with Kęstutis and also Dr. Chen and also Lai, we should continue this dialogue once we leave this seminar, this workshop, especially on the topic we just discussed now. Okay, before I close, I'd like to apologize to all the people who asked questions through the internet. However, what we will do is we will gather those questions, and actually the questions come from not only Taipei, but we have actually from Netherlands. Our good friend Frank was online with a good question, and from India and all parts of the world. And my apologies again, we cannot answer all the questions one by one. However, we will follow up with a response to all the questions that are being addressed in one way or the other through the electronic media. Okay, thank you very much. And what I will do, again, I was reminded that we are running out of time, so I need to provide a closing to this. And what I have done is I want to summarize our discussion, at the same time make some conclusion as to the importance of circular economy as we move forward. Today's seminar, actually, not even a conference, because we're not sitting together. It's evident that both Taiwan and the EU, we both have a very strong willingness towards promoting the circular economy. The EU's CE action plan, as was described by Kęstutis, was very comprehensive. It covers the entire life cycle of products, targeting their design, promoting circular economy processes, fostering sustainable consumption with both legislative and non-legislative measures. Transition to circular economy calls for a systematic approach, as we have discussed earlier. It requires cross-border collaboration. It needs to cut across global trade and investment barriers, instigate new policies, and to redesign a highly circular supply and service network with which to replace the traditional linear supply chain. And again, it was reminded that this is a system approach to it. Let me take the remaining time to summarize for our audience on how EU and Taiwan can and should do together to lead the transition to circular economy. And here is a concluding slide I'd like to share with the audience. The first UN FCCC's COP meeting to mitigate climate crisis was held 26 years ago in Germany, in 1995. Parallel to all the COP conferences, also taking place around the world are numerous economic dialogues among nations, and of course, routine commercial trading activities between companies. However, these dialogues, for the most part, remain business as usual and continue to thrive in the shadow of the traditional linear economic model and principles. As a result, and somewhat ironic, that both types of dialogue, the economic dialogue and climate crisis or environmental dialogues, when successfully negotiated, they actually yield opposing results. Economic dialogues will result in buying, selling, and therefore manufacturing more products, which would ultimately actually increase greenhouse gas emission. This actually puts added pressure on environmental and climate-related dialogues, including COP conferences, as these dialogues, for all intents and purposes, are designed to accelerate reduction on greenhouse gas emission. Therefore, as we move into the next 30 years, as we've shown on this chart, leading to 2050, it is now imperative that we align and synchronize future economic and trade dialogues with that of dialogues of circular collaboration to mitigate climate crisis. It is in this vein and in the interest of win-win that all nations must closely collaborate to transition to circular economy, especially between the production-based countries like Taiwan or Czech Republic, India, Vietnam, etc., and also the consumption.
I'm not entirely sure what happened there with Mr. Huang, but I think we can end our discussion here. On behalf of EIAS, I would really like to thank all the speakers, all the participants for your active questions and interactions as well. It has been a great discussion, and we look forward definitely on the EIAS side to work together both with the EU and with our partners in Asia, such as Taiwan, to work further on circular economy and on these topics, and to extend the dialogue and to exchange best practices. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to welcome you to EIS and our activities again in the very near future. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.